One, two, three.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. One.
Crackled.
A little over a year in office.
Tonight, President Biden delivers his first State of the Union address to members of Congress and the nation.
With fear of what war between Russia and Ukraine means for the United States as a backdrop.
I know this is hard and that Americans are already hurting. I will do everything in my power to limit the pain the American people are feeling.
A growing labor market.
I'm pleased to report this morning, but many of you already know, that America's job machine is going stronger than ever.
Yet a pandemic that persists.
I didn't overpromise, but I have probably outperformed what anybody thought would happen.
Polls show Americans may not agree, but the president says he's getting things accomplished.
Can you think of any other president's done as much in 1 year? Name one for me.
Tonight, his chance to update America on exactly what he's done,
What he plans to do, and the current state of our union.
Reminded us, in America, we do our part.
And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. CBN News special coverage of the State of the Union 2022. This is President Joe Biden's first State of the Union, and we're all looking forward to that. I'm Jenna Browder, along with John Jessup and David Brody, and we will be taking the president's speech at 9 o'clock. Until then, a little bit of analysis.
That's right. And real quick, just a reminder, whether you're joining us on YouTube or on CBNnews.com or any of our other platforms, we just want to remind you that you can always get our content by downloading the CBN News app. All you need to do is go to CBNnews.com to get instructions and find out where and how you can do that. Jenna, David, it is an exciting night. It's good to see you both.
It's great to see both of you. It's going to be a wild night for sure.
Yeah. So the State of the Union, this is something, a little bit of background, this is something that the president does every year. Last year, President Biden gave a joint session of Congress address just because he was so new, just very, very recently inaugurated. So this year is actually his first State of the Union. It's a chance to rally support for the president's agenda, to kind of lay out what he's done so far in office and what he's going to do and what he hopes to do in the future. And it's the president's constitutional duty to annually update the American people like this.
That's right. And just real quickly, we'll kind of give you a quick overview of what you're seeing on the screen. You'll see members of Congress and also members of the cabinet enter into the House chamber. As Jenna just said, this is an event that happens every year. It is constitutionally mandated that the president from time to time appear before Congress to give a message. The biggest difference that you'll see from this year versus last year is what you're already seeing. Last year's attendance was very sparse. There were only 200 people allowed in the House chamber, and that was because of COVID restrictions. You'll see today that the full House is going to be filled. All 535 members of Congress were invited to attend, as well as the cabinet members, as well as Supreme Court justices. And you'll see a lack of 100% mask compliance. That's because the position of the House made the decision earlier this week to allow people to come into the House chamber without their masks, signifying that we have hit a different point on the point of our pandemic. David, real quickly, the president down in the polls. The president also very occupied on what's happening internationally. We know that he's going to start talking about Ukraine and the crisis there, and Russia as the belligerent enemy, if you will. David, what do you anticipate? What are you looking for tonight with the president, who is behind in the polls, and also looking ahead to November, the midterm elections, where they're trying to stave off a huge red wave?
Well, John, a lot of questions there, but let me start with this. And Jenna and both of you mentioned this at the top. This is typically the time where he's going to go through his domestic priorities and kind of lay out the agenda and the things that he wants passed. Here's the problem. It's been a really bad year for Joe Biden. And even this speech, that's what it should be about. He's really not going to be able to do that. Yeah, he'll go through the litany. We'll hear all the domestic priorities, but the truth of the matter is the headline from this speech will be all about Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and everything else will get pushed to the side. So once again, an opportunity that Joe Biden would normally have to push some of that agenda is going to be kind of an afterthought tonight. And that's the truth. And here's the other problem for Joe Biden. there really isn't anything in the hopper for Joe Biden and the Democrats to get past at this point. Unless Joe Manchin, the last time I checked, he's still a senator from West Virginia, and so is Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona. They have stifled everything that he's tried to do, and that's not going to change. So domestically, he's not going to get anything done if we could just kind of cut to the chase. Okay, so you're going to hear a lot of this tonight. It's not going to matter. But what will matter is Russia and Ukraine and what he says there. And let me just point this out before we, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but this is really important and something he's not going to point out tonight. He's going to talk about sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. Here's what he's not going to say. The sanctions do not include oil and gas coming from Russia. That's the ballgame. Folks, that is the ballgame. So the sanctions are on banks, the sanctions are on a lot of other different things, but not on oil and gas. And so there's a lot of criticism of the Biden administration say, wait a minute, why we're in essence funding the war for Putin, because you've got situations here where Putin's getting $100 a barrel in oil because he controls a lot of the world's oil supply, at least 17% from Russia. And so they're saying, well, why aren't we sanctioning the oil there out of Russia? Well, the answer is that Biden feels that at this point, if we do that, that it's going to affect the world's oil supply and therefore gas prices are really going to increase. But the bottom line is Russia is not getting penalized right now, Jenna and John, for the sanctions have nothing to do with oil and gas. And that's the ballgame. That's a problem.
And if I could just point out, we just saw the Supreme Court of the United States entering. We were told that most of the justices would be in attendance tonight. Up next, we're expecting the First Lady of the United States. We should mention on the topic of Ukraine, one of her guests will be the ambassador of Ukraine to the United States. So that does signal certainly that Ukraine will weigh heavy in tonight's speech. David, to your point, sanctions, oil and gas, the president not wanting to raise gas prices for the American people, inflation, huge, a huge deal. Another topic and part of the backdrop of tonight as he enters this chamber and addresses the American people.
Yeah, and I think, Jenna, the problem for the president right now is that people actually go grocery shopping. And the people actually go out to dinner and they buy plane tickets. And every time they do all of that, they realize, this is a problem. My milk is costing 42% or 42 cents more. Or I'm going out to dinner and that plate size with all the plate of food that I used to get doesn't look as big. Why is that? Why? We know businesses are saving money, passing the cost along to consumers. So that's the problem for Biden. So here's my point. Tonight, when he goes through the litany of what he's going to do to tackle inflation, wonderful, but it's a white paper. It means nothing to people that are actually going out and seeing the damage that inflation has done to this country. So this is a problem.
David, the president is going to talk about and try to make the case that the Biden economic strategy is producing, as the White House put out today in their notes, historic results. They're going to talk about the economy achieving its fastest growth in history, the economic growth, the fastest in nearly 40 years. They're going to talk about unemployment being down. But as you mentioned, inflation being as high as it is, that might not land with Americans on the whole. You're seeing a lot of blue and gold in the audience, and that signifies support for Ukraine. David, I want to shift gears here real quickly because we only have a few minutes before the president steps in. And we'll hear the Madam Speaker, the President of the United States. Two things, if I can. First and foremost, let's remind our audience, you have a lot of people who either support the president or don't. They say, I didn't vote for this guy or I did. Why is it important for us to cover the State of the Union regardless of support of the president? And then secondly, let's talk a little bit about the Democratic rebuttal. Normally you have a Republican response, but if I understand correctly, there's a Democratic rebuttal as well.
Well, I'm going to be fully honest, and it's a question that or an answer that a lot of people might not want to hear. But today, in this day and age, the State of the Union doesn't carry as much weight as it used to. Social media and all the clips we see in a 24/7 viral world, it doesn't have the same weight. People used to wait around for the State of the Union and say, oh boy, the president's coming in prime time tonight, 15, 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It's not like that anymore. So what we wait for tonight is some viral moments. We'll talk about them afterwards. What's going to go viral? And that's what it's all about, because once it goes viral, then News articles are built from that, and news articles that are built from that create the dominant narrative in the media. And that's how the news is disseminated today. I think that's important. As for the Democrat response, it'll be interesting. The fact that the Democrats are even having a response to a Democrat president is news in and of itself. But Rashida Tlaib will obviously do that. It's honestly an unforced error on the Democrats' part, and a lot of centrists don't want to see it. But the progressives believe that they're winning the ideological battle inside the party, and so they want to keep that momentum.
Yeah. So some of the other things the president will talk about tonight, some of his accomplishments in office, bipartisan infrastructure bill. That was the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that was overshadowed by the failed Build Back Better bill. There's also the American Rescue Plan that was $1.9 trillion. $1.9 trillion and had to do with COVID relief money. He'll talk about Ukraine and uniting NATO and Western allies in this most recent chaos in Eastern Europe. And then the Supreme Court nominee, we should mention that, Ketanji Brown Jackson. He has nominated her to the Supreme Court, the first African-American woman to be nominated. So those are some of his accomplishments, and he needs to, because he, walking into a tough chamber tonight. We mentioned the polling a little bit, but all major recent polls show the president below 40% approval. Those are all recent major polls coming out. A Washington Post ABC News poll, 37% approval rate.
We're waiting for the announcement to the president to arrive in the chamber. As you can see, the House floor crowded with members of the Senate, members of the House, and the president's cabinet. Jenna, as you just mentioned, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the president's nominee to replace, there you see, retiring Justice Stephen Breyer. He will be making the case, it is expected tonight, as to why he believes that she should be confirmed. And the goal of the Senate, David, I'm sure you've heard, is for her to be confirmed sometime by mid-April. She will be making the rounds on Capitol Hill starting tomorrow, meeting with Senator Durbin, who heads the Judiciary Committee, and then also with Senators Schumer and McConnell.
Yeah, this will be a slam dunk, guys. First African-American woman nominated to the Supreme Court. You're not going to get in the way of that. So I see this as a smooth sailing situation, especially because she's going to replace Breyer for sure. Let me just say, John, Jenna, and John, you mentioned something earlier. And I know if you got to break away from me, please, John. I'm sure you'd love to interrupt me, by the way. But
never.
Beyond, no. I'm just playing with you. But listen, here's the thing. The GDP is up 5.9% here recently, and unemployment's down to 4%. But let's also remember, this is coming out of COVID, where we have huge unemployment and real GDP problems. So this idea that Biden's going to tout this amazing economic progress, it's not because of the policies, folks. It's because of what happened with COVID, and now we're coming out of COVID. So it's a natural progression. But of course, he'll take credit for it. I mean, you can also make the same case that, unemployment was the worst under Donald Trump ever. Well, why was that? Because COVID hit. So you've got the same situation. The numbers are skewed, but once again, he wouldn't be the first president to skew a few numbers.
David, this is 1 year after he was inaugurated, a little more than 1 year. The State of the Union coming a little bit later than most. But we think back on some of the campaign promises the president made, and one of the biggest ones was that he would unite a very divided country. Tonight, there's supposed to be some bipartisanship. We'll see if he can reach out to the other side, try to bring both sides together. What are you expecting in that sense? Do you think we'll see a real arm extended to the Republican side of the chamber?
Well, in this first year, he wanted to achieve bipartisanship, and instead he has become one of the most, if not the most partisan president in United States history. I don't think there's any question about that. He has not achieved that goal. Now, tonight, I think you see a lot of applause on both sides of the aisle when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, and the United States, and that situation. I don't think there's any question about it. So I think it's going to get off to a very good start for Joe Biden tonight, based on the fact that you're going to have Republicans and Democrats really coalescing around this idea of freedom and America needs to be a leader in the world from a moral standpoint. I mean, who disagrees with that? And I think that will be a unifying message at the beginning, but we'll see how it works out.
Let's just take a quick moment to listen as it appears the president is about to enter the chamber.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
David, you've been covering states of the union for quite some time. How early do people have to get into the chamber to get those great seats?
Could be 4 to 6 hours, maybe longer. I know Sheila Jackson Lee. I'm looking for Sheila Jackson Lee. Boy, she typically is one of the ones that makes a beeline. Is that her? Actually, I got to put my glasses on. I couldn't tell.
I saw her in a yellow jacket there.
Yes, yeah, there you go. So yeah, I knew she'd be there. But yeah, you're looking at. I mean, that's I mean, it's like kind of like the best ticket in town, other than my bar mitzvah 40 years ago.
David, so we mentioned some of the polling and the really the tough circumstances the president is walking into tonight. This is an opportunity for him to turn things around, maybe right the ship a little bit. Talk a little bit how important is the State of the Union, and can it reset a presidency?
Well, it has the potential to reset a presidency, but in this case, it's going to be very difficult. And here's why. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here, but here's the truth. I mean, Biden's poll numbers are in the tank, and the trajectory has gone just south as can be. And it all started with Afghanistan. And I think we've talked about that a little bit on Faith Nation today. But just this idea that ever since Afghanistan came about and the bungled response to get out of Afghanistan, it just the incompetency storyline has just not been able. He's not been able to shake it.
President there now on the speaker's rostrum.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Please. Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justices of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight, we meet as Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, and to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you. 6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people. And President Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, and she's resolved. Yes, we, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how he would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Even Switzerland are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. To technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear, our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos, but while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. While it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to see what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test. And it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people to our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world. We meet tonight in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting, we needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk. It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks, and it worked. It worked. It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years, and the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth, and now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, it's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks, when we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place, 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip, that power the world in everyday lives, from smartphones, technology, the internet, technology that's yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who is here tonight. I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go. Pat, stand up. Pat came to see me, and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk. I'll sign it. And we'll really take off in a big way. And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see what used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted, but the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. And folks, that means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month so everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second, let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care. Cut the cost of child care. Folks, if you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families and help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny. I may be wrong, but my guess is if we took a secret ballot in this floor, that we'd all agree that the present tax system ain't fair. We have to fix it. I'm not looking to punish anybody, but let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, and like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is, even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid zero in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. We've got And that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas. It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go more detail later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, and while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? In my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. And tonight I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud. And look, I think we all agree, thank you. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. Capitalism without competition is exploitation. It drives up profits. And corporations have to compete. Their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs, and invest in what Jill, our First Lady who teaches full-time, calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look, let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped. When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time, build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative, so people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. And folks, if you're immunocompromised or have some other vulnerability, we have treatments and free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone's needs as we move forward. On testing, we've made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants. If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school. With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19. Time with one another. The worst of all, the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look, we can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Moore was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced. I ask Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence. Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines that hold up to 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests? Look, repeal the liability shield that makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, It's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act. And while you're at it, pass the Disclose Act so Americans know who's funding our election. Look, tonight, I like to honor someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Justice Breyer, an Army veteran, constitutional scholar, retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it. Get up, stand, let them see you. Thank you. And we all know, no matter what your ideology, we all know one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court. As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence. A former top litigator in private practice, a former federal public defender, from a family of public school educators and police officers. She's a consensus builder. Since she's been nominated, she's received a broad range of support, including the Fraternal Order of Police and former judges supported by Democrats and Republicans. Folks, if we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system. And as you might guess, I think we can do both. At our border, we've installed new technology like cutting-edge scanners to better detect drug smuggling. We've set up joint patrols with Mexico and Guatemala to catch more human traffickers. We're putting in place dedicated immigration judges in a significant larger number so families fleeing persecution and violence can have their cases heard faster, and those who don't legitimately hear can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack as never before. If you want to go forward, not backwards, we must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks, for our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families, it's simply wrong. And I said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks, as I've just demonstrated, while it often appears we do not agree, and that we do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, to protecting aged Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. It's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic. There's so much we can do. Increase funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors that stop doctors from prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local law enforcement to go after the traffickers. And if you're suffering from addiction, you should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second, let's take on mental health, especially among our children whose lives and education have been turned upside down. The American Rescue Plan gave schools money to hire teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure your school does just that. They have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic: bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. Folks, thank you. Thank you for the courage you showed. It's time to strengthen privacy protections, ban targeted advertising to children, demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children, and let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people can turn for help, and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look, the third piece of that agenda is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country. They're the best of us. I've always believed that we have a sacred obligation to equip those we send to war and care for those in their family when they come home. My administration is providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 40 times. These burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world. Never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden. I don't know for sure if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near, in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops. But I am committed to find out everything we can, committed to military families like Danielle Robinson from Ohio, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Danielle is here with us tonight. They love going to Ohio State football games. And they love building Legos with their daughter. But cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA is pioneering new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law to make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits and the comprehensive health care they deserve. And fourth and last, let's end cancer as we know it. This is personal. This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the #2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years, and I think we can do better than that. Turn cancers from death sentences into treatable diseases. More support for patients and their families. To get there, I call on Congress to fund what I call ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA in the Defense Department, projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more to make our forces more safer and be able to wage war with more clarity. ARPA will have a singular purpose: to drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation. We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those 4 things. My fellow Americans, tonight we've gathered in this sacred space, a citadel of democracy, in this Capitol. Generation after generation of Americans have debated great questions amid great strife and have done great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty, debated totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known. Now is the hour, our moment of responsibility, our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test, protect freedom and liberty, expand fairness and opportunity, and we will save democracy. As hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we've faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities. So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the State of the Union. And my report is this: the State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
There you have it, President Joe Biden delivering his first State of the Union address. A little over an hour. Jenna and David are back here with me. We've got a few minutes before we hit the Republican response, so maybe we just start off with first impressions. Mr. Brody.
Well, thanks for starting, I guess, with me, John. I'm going through my notes here. But by the way, let's clear up something real quick. That was Lauren Boebert, the heckler. In the crowd. I call her a heckler. I mean, I guess that's what you would call her. You probably noticed that. She was referring to when Biden mentioned Afghanistan, she specifically was talking, I'm just going to get her exact words here, but she was talking specifically about the 13 servicemen that died in Afghanistan. And so she was criticizing him for that. And that's what she was talking about. Overall impressions. Look, I think there was a lot of bipartisan applause tonight. How could there not be when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, the United States situation at the top? But Biden handled that very well. He made some new announcement, obviously, about the Russian airspace, or excuse me, the United States airspace, not flying planes into Russian planes in the United States airspace. So I thought that was pretty solid. But, you know, as I go kind of through the list here, and it's a long list, so I'll just put my computer away for a little bit. But he talked about, just from a domestic standpoint, securing the border. We need to secure the border. Well, hold on. Can we rewind the Faith Nation tapes? I mean, that we've been talking about the last year? That's not at all what he's been talking about. Tonight he says he wants to secure the border. He also said, which I thought was interesting, he's going to get a lot of pushback on this from liberals. He said, we don't want to defund the police. We want to fund the police. I think that will be controversial in liberal circles. So those were a couple domestic, issues there. He had a lot of problems tonight with fumbling of words. That's normal for Biden, sadly. I mean, he called the Ukrainian people, was it the Iranian people? Was it the Uranian people? I don't know what he was saying. But anyhow, look, that was really a mess up. He really messed up quite a bit just on style, but that's neither here nor there. Overall, it's kind of what I expected. But he seemed to kind of rush through it a little bit, and those are some of my initial takes.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about the economy, and I think one word that probably a lot of people heard is spend money. Talking a lot about Build Back Better and some of the agenda items that he wants to accomplish: $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, those kinds of things. David, there's surely to be a lot of criticism from the other side of the aisle on that, and also, it is interesting to hear him talk about some of these things that we've seen he doesn't have the support for in Congress with Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, and others. So it's interesting that he would bring them up like this.
Yeah, and he was had a litany of all different sorts of things that he wanted passed and everything, but none of it's going to happen. I mean, that's just the truth. And did you notice at the end, guys? He said the state of our nation, or actually he said the state. Well, first he said nation, then he said union. The state of our union is strong, but he didn't pause. I thought that was very interesting because he knew that if he paused, he was going to either get some mumbles or some murmurs or maybe not applause, because he didn't want to give the Republicans a chance to say, wait a minute, absolutely not. So he said the state of our union is strong, and continued on. And by the way, let's be honest. Can we all be honest? I mean, let's just be honest. The state of our union is not strong. I mean, if you're a Democrat today, do you really think the state of our union is strong? Because last time I checked, Democrats purchase milk, and Democrats go to restaurants, and Democrats purchase airline tickets. So, I mean, we should just be honest. I mean, that's what we do at CBN, do we not? Do we not try to break through the clutter and call you call it out the way it really is. And the way it is that there's inflation in this country that's really, really bad. There's division in this country that's really, really bad. And we can't solve these problems until we confront them head on. So I'm not necessarily blaming Biden here. I think a Republican president would have also painted a rosy picture as well, because that's what they do. But I think it's up to us to call out not just a Biden, but a Trump or a Reagan or a Obama, because we need to kind of say, where are we as Americans? And I got to tell you, I just thought it was it's unfortunate that it just seems so rosy. Like he's talking about securing the border, but for since he's been president, he hasn't wanted to secure the border. So I can't. It just baffles my mind that we just let people get away with this type of stuff.
I can't think of a president in history, David, who's ever said that the state of our union is anything other than strong. And to that point, the exact quote was, the state of the union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. And as David said, he tried to whip right through that to kind of get to the justification of why he was saying it was strong. David, I do want to shift gears here because pretty soon we'll be having the Republican response, and that's Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. She is a Republican. She's serving her first full elected term. She entered the governorship after Terry Branstad, who was before her, was sent on a mission in the Trump administration to be to serve in the foreign corps. David, talk about Governor Reynolds. Why was she selected, and what do you think her message will be tonight as a rebuttal to President Biden's first State of the Union?
I'll make it quick. I know I rambled earlier. The heartland, that's why she was chosen. She's from the heartland, and she'll give kind of a heartland rebuttal. And what I mean by that is she'll talk about kind of that Glenn Youngkin strategy, right? This idea that the suburbs are kind of under attack with the schools and the critical race theory. And, Biden didn't address any of that tonight. And so I think you'll see a lot of that. And I think that's the bread and butter for Republicans to win in 2022.
Some analysis that I was reading going into tonight, Kim Reynolds, she gained a lot of national attention for her leadership regarding the pandemic, which really kind of ran counter to the White House's approach, more of a freedom approach in terms of vaccines and mandates. She was slow to impose COVID restrictions. She rolled back pandemic safety protocols as early as February of 2021. And again, she opposed vaccine mandates. So there's that too. She's her speech will come in stark contrast to the president's. David, I'd like to get your thoughts on, is she a good choice for the Republican Party?
I think so, though I'll be honest with you, Bobby Jindal was a good choice until he gave his State of the Union rebuttal years ago. It was over a decade ago, and it went horribly. So we're about to find out if she's a good choice or not, to see how it kind of goes down. I do want to say one quick thing about the State of the Union. If you notice, the priorities made sense, right? I mean, he went Russia at the top, then he went into inflation in the economy, and then he went into COVID. Isn't that interesting? What a difference a year makes. I mean, COVID was third. I mean, he didn't get to COVID until about 20 minutes into the speech or so, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe longer. So I just think that's interesting. I think that tells you what's on the Biden administration's mind here. They know they have to deal with Russia. Look, here's what the Biden administration is thinking on Russia. They want to redo from Afghanistan. And they want to be strong here. And they feel this is an opportunity for them to kind of regain the competency that they forgoed. I can't say that word. They forgoed. Excuse me.
That's a tough one, David. I can't even add anything to that.
No, and I failed English, I think, somewhere in 7th grade. but anyhow, that's what they want to do. So that's why that's important, obviously. And then and also kind of plays up to what Biden's trying to do here with freedom, and he talks a lot about that. But then inflation obviously is big. They know they have to combat that, and that's why COVID is kind of getting third billing in the speech tonight.
David, one of the things that I thought was interesting was, like you said, he kind of had a tick list here tonight talking about democracy triumphing over tyranny, and then he went into the economy. He definitely touted the American Recovery Act. He talked about raising minimum wages, lowering healthcare costs, closing tax loopholes, overcoming COVID, addressing crime, passing the Freedom to Vote Act. He was really sweeping in all of what he wanted to do legislatively. One point that he mentioned was preserving women's right to choose. I want to bring that up because Governor Reynolds has been someone who's been on the fight on the other end of the spectrum, taking cases not just there in the state of Iowa, but taking cases that have gone all the way to the Supreme Court. She's got an interesting track record when it comes to fighting for life, but she also has an interesting life story. I wonder if you think that she'll address part of that, which is her two DUIs, which she said were actually kind of like a touch point that just changed the trajectory of her life, being 17 years sober. And part of the reason why she's allowed people who had felony convictions who served their time to be reinstated with the right to vote. I wonder if you think that she'll bring that up.
My guess is she probably will, because it's a way to relate to the viewers and appear human, if you will. I did think it was interesting that Biden, I'll be honest with you, didn't spend too much time on the pro-choice, whatever you want to call other people call pro-abortion issue at all. He didn't. He just kind of glossed over it. I think it was about 3-4 lines in the speech, and that's about it. And it seemed like it was part of his checklist. So he didn't really make it too much of a priority. And I'm surprised at that, because we're going into obviously the midterm elections in 2022, and you've got the Supreme Court nominee coming up. So you would think that would be a way to galvanize the base a little bit.
And you've got these big Supreme Court cases that are about to come out this June.
Yeah, that's right. So it makes me wonder, with that, plus what I said about the border. He talked about securing the border, and then he talked about he didn't want to defund the police. I wonder if this was his appeal to a degree to some of the independents out there, that he wanted to kind of not look like this radical leftist. So I'm going to watch to see what the far left in this country and what their reaction to Biden's speech is, if they're going to be a bit tepid in their support.
Yeah, we did see some cutaway shots of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when he was talking about, more climate control and some climate measures. So I think that was probably a bit of an appeal to maybe that faction of the party. David, to your point, independents going into tonight, Washington Post ABC News poll, only 30% of independents approved of the president's job in office so far. Let me ask you this. Do you think tonight could have moved the needle for the president? Did he win over any of those independents or other people who maybe who haven't been so strong behind him?
We'll see, but I wouldn't be surprised, Jenna. It's a great question. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an uptick among independents after the speech, actually. Maybe 2, 3, 4 points. I don't know what it is. I mean, he's got a long way to go with independents because he dropped so precipitously. But the bottom line is, yeah, I think he could. And why do I say that? Because of the Russia-Ukraine United States situation at the beginning, that's bipartisan. Talked about securing the border, talked about some of the other things we talked about tonight, not wanting to defund the police. And so I think if you put it all together, it seemed more centrist. It wasn't centrist, but it was more centrist than Joe Biden has ever probably appeared so far in his presidency. So I think there was some of that. There was all the liberal stuff as well. But I do think he was trying to make an effort to attract some of those independents. He could have gone farther. So that's why I think the uptick might be a little bit, not significant, though.
Where he ended, I thought, was quite interesting. He talked about his unity agenda and offered up 4 different points: fighting the opioid crisis, addressing mental health, helping out veterans, and then also addressing cancer. David, we talk often about the discord and polarization in Washington. Do you think that there's room in American politics today to make movement on some of these things that, again, he called his unity agenda?
Well, I'd like to hope so, John. I mean, look, who doesn't want to beat cancer, right? Who doesn't want to fight the opioid epidemic in this country? And on to all the points that he was making. So you would think pie in the sky, yes. But the problem is we live in such a polarized climate today that everybody's fundraising off of this stuff. And so in other words, if you have, let's say, for example, Lauren Boebert or someone, someone on the right or someone on the left, they're not going to want to. They know they're going to have ads run against them because they sided with Biden on X issue, and then they might get primaried. And this is all about that right now rather than for love of country. And it happens on both sides. So I'm just concerned that the appearance, even on issues that we should all come together on, are going to get in the way. So we'll see. You know, ultimately, it is about government funding of some of these programs, and I think that's where conservatives get tripped up. They don't really want to kind of go there on a lot of the funding. They feel like that should be a state and local issue, not a federal issue, because obviously, going back to first principles in the Constitution, how much should the federal government really get involved, even in the opioid crisis, or even in cancer research? That should be at the state and local levels potentially, and not as much at the federal level. So there's a lot of give and take there.
Again, we are just watching President Biden as he exits the chamber. He's visiting with lawmakers and some of the 1,600 guests who were invited to the State of the Union speech tonight. Much fuller chamber than what we saw last year. And we're just waiting here for the GOP response that will be delivered by Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. David, going back to her speech, I'd like to, we talked a little bit about her and who she is. Rising star in the Republican Party. But what do you expect to hear from the GOP tonight? What kind of rebuttal?
Well, I think you're going to see quite a bit of, how do I say this, kind of a bit of a suburban speech, a bit of a heartland speech, a little bit more of a parent-centered speech. We didn't hear Joe Biden, and I'll have to check, John, Jenna, maybe you can help me on the transcript, but I don't remember him saying much about parents and schools. I mean, you talk about schools with COVID, but I'm talking about more just about what's happening about parents being frustrated in this country. And I know we just talked about families, but I'm really talking more about there's an uprising in the Loudoun counties of the world out there, and there's frustration that the parents are just frustrated left and right about COVID policies and sexually explicit books in libraries and critical race theory. And there's a lot of stuff going on that is real. It's real. I mean, Glenn Youngkin is governor today because of a lot of that stuff. And this is what Democrats don't want to touch. And I think Kim Reynolds will touch on it tonight.
I think one of the things we should mention as President Biden makes his way out of the chamber is how different that chamber will look a year from now, given the fact that we are going to go through a midterm election cycle. Within that chamber, you have members on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, who plan to retire, who've announced their retirements. But on the Democratic side, there have been over 30 retirements that have been announced. So you're talking about a lot of potential change from this year to next year. David, one of the things that President Biden is always given credit is his ability to relate and his ability to have empathy and connect with people. How do you think he did tonight as far as showing he's not just a commander-in-chief, but a consoler-in-chief, if you will? And how do you think that might play against or play for Governor Kim Reynolds when she gives her rebuttal?
Well, I thought Biden, it's a good point, John. I thought Biden did very well on that. That's always been his strength, and he's very kind of an ordinary Joe, if you will, and that has been his appeal to a degree. Of course, a lot of people take issue about some of what he's saying. He likes to play the moral card a lot. That was the reason he got into the race to begin with against Donald Trump, that he was going to be the morality in chief guy. And of course, we can go through the list of how he has not been anything like that at all. But in terms of style and in the way he communicates as it relates, well, other than all the bundles that he had, bungles, but sure, he did very well in that area. But once again, at the end of the day, I'm not quite sure if it matters if you can't get the signing ceremony with Republicans or Joe Manchin, for that matter, and Kyrsten Sinema. That's his real problem. He's got a numbers issue now. And look, if he has a numbers issue now, just wait until the fall. If this red wave happens, I mean, we're looking at potentially 80, 85 seats flipping, and Republicans not only taking control, but having a sizable majority in the House and probably winning the Senate as well.
Just a note here, we're about 4 minutes out from the GOP response, so we're waiting for that. David, you mentioned Joe Manchin. I just got an alert on my phone. Joe Manchin, a Democrat senator from West Virginia, sat with the Republicans tonight. What do you think of that? What do you make of that?
That's interesting. That speaks volumes. Wow, I'm going to try to unpack that on live YouTube television, if you will. Yeah, look, the seating placement is very important. And we've seen throughout State of the Unions before, whether it be, let's say, for example, Lindsey Graham. Well, Lindsey Graham would sit next to Joe Biden back in the day, or, there would always be Republicans and Democrats kind of sitting next to each other to kind of say, hey, we're still Americans. We're in this together. The fact that Joe Manchin is sitting with Republicans is a bit of a slap in the face, there's no doubt, to the president and his party. But beyond that, I think Joe Manchin was sending a message tonight to say, look, Democrats, you need to come over and work with Republicans. I'm sitting with Republicans. Now you need to work with Republicans, because remember, what does Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi wanted to do this whole time, especially Schumer in the Senate? They want to change the filibuster rules. They want to ram things through. They want to do all of this. And they haven't wanted to really work with Republicans. And of course, Republicans really haven't wanted to work with Democrats either. But if you're at a 50-50 split, you got to be able to do some bipartisan work. So I definitely think it was a message sent by Manchin tonight, for sure. That's very interesting, Jenna.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, and some other Democrats really put a roadblock in a lot of legislation for the president, most notably Build Back Better and that second infrastructure bill. Senate split 50-50, and we'll see what, to John's point, what the midterm elections bring this time next year. It could be a very different speech. It could be a very different chamber. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, we will. Go ahead, John. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No. I feel like you can riff on that. So go ahead. I don't want to deny you the opportunity.
Well, it will be interesting. Jenna, you really make a good point here, because now I'm really curious. Can we morph a year ahead and see what Joe Biden's speech is going to be like in a year? Because let's be honest, it looks like it is going to be a red wave. And if it is, what will his tenor be exactly? I mean, you would think he would have to kind of remember when Obama in 2010, when the Tea Party had that resurgence or that surge, he said, we got a shellacking. That's what Obama said in 2010. Well, if Obama got a shellacking in 2010, I can't even think of a worse word than shellacking what Biden could get. And so therefore, what will he say in a year from now? Will he get the message, and will he double down? I don't know. And the reason I don't know, you would think that he would moderate at that point. But here's the problem, Jenna and John. There will be a presidential election coming up, and he needs the base to get out. And if he wants the base to get out, he needs the progressives to get out, because they're the ones that are really the ones that are going to kind of spearhead the campaign and get him reelected.
David, perfect timing. We are just seconds away from Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds and her Republican response to the president's State of the Union address.
Good evening. I'm Kim Reynolds, governor of the great state of Iowa. Like you, I just watched the president's address. I listened as the governor of our state, as a mom and a grandmother of 11, who's worried our country is on the wrong track. We're now 1 year into his presidency, and instead of moving America forward, it feels like President Biden and his party have sent us back in time, to the late 70s and early 80s, when runaway inflation was hammering families, a violent crime wave was crashing our cities, and the Soviet Army was trying to redraw the world map. Even before taking the oath of office, the president told us that he wanted to, quote, make America respected around the world again, and to unite us here at home. He's failed on both fronts. The disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal did more than cost American lives. It betrayed our allies and emboldened our enemies. North Korea is testing missiles again at an alarming rate. The Speaker of the House recently warned our Olympic athletes not to speak out against China. And now Russia has launched an unprovoked, full-scale military invasion of Ukraine, an attack on democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. Now all Americans must stand united in solidarity with the brave people of Ukraine as they courageously defend their country against Putin's tyranny as they fight for their freedom. But we shouldn't ignore what happened in the run-up to Putin's invasion, waiving sanctions on Russian pipelines while eliminating oil production here at home, focusing on political correctness rather than military readiness, reacting to world events instead of driving them. Weakness on the world stage has a cost, And the president's approach to foreign policy has consistently been too little, too late. It's time for America to once again project confidence. It's time to be decisive. It's time to lead. But we can't project strength abroad if we're weak at home. And that's what I want to discuss with you tonight. The President and Democrats in Congress have spent the last year either ignoring the issues facing Americans or making them worse. They were warned that spending trillions would lead to soaring inflation. They were told that their anti-energy policies would send gas prices to new heights, but they plowed ahead anyway, raising the price at the pump by 50% and pushing inflation to a 40-year high. 4 decades ago, when our nation was last reeling from inflation, I was a young working mom just starting out. My husband Kevin worked days while I watched our girls, and then we would literally switch. We would pass in the yard as he was coming home, and I was leaving to work evenings at the local grocery store. From across that checkout counter, I saw the pain of inflation on my neighbors' faces. I saw what happens when prices rise faster than wages. The Biden administration believes inflation is a, quote, high-class problem. I can tell you, it's an everybody problem. I saw moms and dads' paychecks buy them less and less. I watched working people choose which essentials to take home and which ones to leave behind. And now President Biden's decisions have a whole new generation feeling that same pain. When I took the oath of office 5 years ago, I promised Iowans that I would never lose sight of who I was working for, that I wouldn't become detached from the problems they were facing, from the problems that I had faced myself. But you don't have to check groceries to see what high inflation does to people. You just need to step outside of the DC bubble. Talk to Americans about what's on their mind. Ask them, what are your concerns? What keeps you up at night? And they'll tell you. And I can tell you what's not on that list. They won't tell you that spending trillions more and bankrupting their children is the answer to their problems. They won't tell you that we should be paying people not to work. And they certainly won't tell you that we should give billions in tax giveaways to millionaires and billionaires in Democrat-controlled states like California, New York, and New Jersey. But that's what the Biden administration has been pushing for over the last year. And that's all part of Build Back Better. Thankfully, the president's agenda didn't pass because even members of his own party said enough is enough. Well, the American people share that view. Enough is enough. And it's not just with DC spending. Americans are tired of a political class trying to remake this country into a place where an elite few tell everyone else what they can and cannot say, what they can and cannot believe. They're tired of people pretending the way to end racism is by categorizing everybody by their race. They're tired of politicians who tell parents they should sit down, be silent, and let government control their kids' education and future. Frankly, they are tired of the theater, where politicians do one thing when the cameras are rolling and another when they believe you can't see them, where governors and mayors enforce mandates but don't follow them, where elected leaders tell their citizens to stay home while they sneak off to Florida for sun and fun, where they demand that your child wear a mask, but they go maskless. So you've heard the excuses. They were just holding their breath. But it's the American people who are waiting to exhale, waiting for the insanity to stop. We now live in a country where violent crime is out of control. Liberal prosecutors are letting criminals off easy, and many prominent Democrats still want to defund the police. You know, it seems like everything is backwards. The Biden administration requires vaccines for Americans who want to go to work or protect this country. but not for migrants who illegally cross the border. The Department of Justice treats parents like domestic terrorists, but looters and shoplifters roam free. The American people are left to feel like they're the enemy. This is not the same country it was a year ago. The president tried to paint a different picture tonight, but his actions over the last 12 months don't match the rhetoric. It's not what he promised when he took office. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is an alternative. Across the nation, Republican governors and legislators are showing Americans what conservative leadership looks like, what it means to respect the people we serve, to hear them out, to stand up for them and walk alongside them. We know that our problems require bold action, but we also know that bold action doesn't have to mean government action. It's Americans making their own decisions for their own families and future. Republican governors face the same COVID-19 virus head-on. But we honored your freedoms and saw right away that lockdowns and school closures, they came with their own significant cost, that mandates weren't the answer. And we actually listened to the science, especially with kids in masks and kids in schools. What happened and is still happening to our children over the last 2 years is unconscionable. Learning loss, isolation, anxiety, depression. In so many states, our kids have been left behind, and so many will never catch up. That's why Iowa was the first state in the nation to require that schools open their doors. I was attacked by the left, I was attacked by the media, but it wasn't a hard choice. It was the right choice. And keeping schools open is only the start of the pro-parent, pro-family revolution that Republicans are leading in Iowa and states across this country. Republicans believe that parents matter. It was true before the pandemic, and it has never been more important to say out loud. Parents matter. They have a right to know and to have a say in what their kids are being taught. Families also have every right to live in a safe and a secure community, and that begins with a safe and secure country. But the Biden administration has refused to secure our border. They've refused to provide the resources to stop human trafficking, to stop the staggering influx of deadly drugs coming into our neighborhoods. They've refused to protect you. With Texas and Arizona leading the way, I, along with Republican governors from several states, have sent resources to the border. And we've actually gone to the border, something that our president and vice president have yet to do since taking office. On the economy, the contrast couldn't be more stark. While Democrats in D.C. are spending trillions, sending inflation soaring, Republican leaders around the country are balancing budgets and cutting taxes, because we know that money spent on Main Street is better than money spent on bureaucracy. Today, I signed legislation that eliminates Iowa's tax on retirement income and sets our tax rate at 3.9%. That's less than half of what it was just 4 years ago. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that out of the top 20 states with the lowest unemployment rates, 17 have Republican governors. Republicans may not have the White House, but we're doing what we can to fill the leadership vacuum. And on the issues that are affecting Americans, Republicans are leading. We're standing up for parents and kids. We're standing up for life. We're keeping our communities safe and thanking those in uniform. We're fighting to restore America's energy independence, and that includes biofuels. We're getting people back to work, not paying them to stay home. Most of all, we're respecting your freedom. Behind me stands Iowa's Capitol, where we display our state motto, Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. And those aren't just empty words. It's a belief that the greatness of this state and this country lies in our people, not government. You shouldn't have to wake up every morning and worry about the next thing the government is going to do to you, your business, or your children. If we as elected leaders are doing our job, then the government is working well, but operating in the background. It's supporting the ingenuity and spirit of our people, not drowning them out. It's keeping them safe, not restricting their freedom. That's what I believe, that's what Republicans believe, and that's what Republicans are doing. I am so blessed to be the governor of Iowa, where people are humble, hardworking, and patriotic. We take care of each other. And yes, we are, as they say, Iowa nice. But you don't have to be from Iowa to see that those are the values of America at its best. All of America. Over the last few years, I've put my faith in Iowans, and they haven't let me down. I encourage this president to do the same, to put his faith in you, the American people, who have never wavered in your belief in this country, regardless of who leads it. Because you know, you've shown that the soul of America isn't about who lives in the White House. It's men and women like you in every corner of this nation who are willing to step up and take responsibility for your communities, for your neighbors, and ultimately for yourselves. By that most important measure at least, the state of our union is indeed strong. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Yeah, that was Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds giving the GOP response to the President's State of the Union address. She talked about a lot. David, I'd like to go to you first and just get your overall thoughts, the governor's speech.
Well, the key line, there will be a pro-parent, pro-family revolution in America. And that's it. That's what happened in Virginia, what we've been talking about. We said that she would probably go there with the parent line. And not only did she do that, she went there multiple times. I mean, I can't count how many times she did it, but it had to be at least 10, 11, 12 times. And that's it. And that's the red wave. We all talk about what does that even mean, the red wave, in terms of like, how would it materialize? That's what it is right there. The pro-parent, pro-family revolution. That's what afoot in America. She tapped into that. Kim Reynolds did. Joe Biden did not. There's no reason for him to tap into it because he wants to kind of avoid it. He doesn't want to talk about it. And so I thought that was kind of a big impression that I had. And also at the beginning where she talked about weak leadership in the United States. So if you've got weakness at home, you've got weakness abroad. And I think that's kind of the tie-in that Republicans will say. And this is what Donald Trump has been saying now for a very long time, the last month or two or a month or so, regarding what Biden's doing with Ukraine and Russia, which is that this would never have happened on his watch because Putin would never have dared go into Russia if Trump was president because of everything from strength at home and X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of the argument Republicans are making, and I think that those are the battle lines ahead.
David, to your point, when you talked about her mentioning pro-parent, pro-family revolution, she also talked about how Americans are waiting for the insanity to stop. She said that it feels like everything is backwards. One point that she mentioned was that you have people, the Biden administration is requiring people who want to go to work to get vaccines, but not immigrants. And this particular line stuck out to me from her. Americans are made to feel like they're the enemy. And I wonder if that is the sentiment that you see, particularly from those on the right, when it comes to the administration, when it comes to how they look at government today, if that's the sentiment that will be driving what we end up seeing a few months down the road with the midterm elections.
Yeah, I think that's the way conservatives see it, John. And I also think, and this is a real problem, the Biden administration has made it pretty clear that they've pitted, and they have. I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but it's true. They've pitted the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. I mean, they've kind of demonized the unvaccinated in this country and said, if you're unvaccinated, basically shame on you. What are you doing? You're spreading disease, and you're hurting your fellow American. And so, they've really pitted each other they pitted both sides against each other. And I think that's caused a lot of division in the country. And I think what Kim Reynolds was getting at, which I thought was a really good point on COVID, she used the word theater. She said, we're done with the theater. The COVID theater, this whole idea, you go to a restaurant. So let me get this straight. You're sitting down and you don't have your mask on and you're ordering, but the waitress has her mask on. And people are like, wait, this is just stupid. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. It's stupid. And here I said it, right? I said the word stupid because this is what Americans think. This is the analysis I'm giving you tonight because this is what real Americans are thinking. Tens of millions of people think the COVID thing is all stupid and theater. Not COVID itself. It's a serious disease. It's not what I'm talking about. But as Kim Reynolds said tonight, the theater aspect. Marco Rubio was not at the State of the Union tonight. He said he won't go. He says it's all theater. He says, I'm done with the whole COVID mask stuff. Now, just within the last 24 to 48 hours before the State of the Union, they lifted a lot of that stuff, so we didn't see it tonight. But before that, they were going to have masks and everything, so he made this decision 3 or 4 weeks ago. He said he wasn't going to go. This is what I'm trying to tell you, that people are done with the theater of COVID. Not with COVID. It's very serious. No one's saying that. That's not what I'm saying. Don't misinterpret. I'm saying the theater of COVID. It's much different. And that's what Republicans will tap into in 2022. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, she made light of, some elected officials who will show up without a mask, and then children are still required to mask, and just the double standards. She did allude to that. Right. She also, this was a quote, she said, bold action doesn't have to mean government action. I thought there was a big emphasis on conservative values and freedom of the individual and just personal liberties. David?
Yeah, and that's a standard line that Republicans have said in the past. But the difference this time, Jenna, and I'm glad you brought it up, is because Joe Biden has lurched to the left. And so there's an opportunity here to tie Biden in with big government even more so than a normal Democrat in the past. Clinton moderated to a degree. Obama didn't really moderate, but he had his moments. Biden has decided he wants to be the next FDR, and he's trying to go all in with the left, and that's why they're bringing it up, and that's why it's a good point to make, if you're at least politically, for sure.
Well, we are out of time. I want to thank everyone for watching here on the YouTube or CBN News or wherever you're watching. We just want to remind you again that you can always get CBN's content by downloading our app. On behalf of Jenna, David, and myself, thank you so much for watching our coverage of the State of the Union and the Republican response. Hope you have a great night.